However, let's get to Lacey Crisp right now. Lacey, you have been in this courtroom every day of this trial from the start. Talk about the emotion and the feeling inside that courtroom as the judge read those guilty verdicts.
Well, it's been 4 years, and you can only imagine for both sides, both families involved in this situation, just the nerves that they were feeling walking into the courtroom today. It took a couple of minutes to get the proceedings going after we heard that the jury had reached a verdict, that it was going to be announced at 12:45. And then we heard the questions that the jurors had throughout the last couple of days of deliberations. They were similar to the questions that the jurors had in the Jason Meade trial. Now, I sat right in front of Andre Hill's family. His sister, Shauna, sat right behind me. And what was interesting is as the jurors walked in to the courtroom, none of them looked at either side. They basically looked straight ahead as they walked in. Another interesting thing about the jury is that typically we know there will be 12 jurors and there will be a handful of alternates. We lost one alternate earlier in the trial, but the judge had the alternates sit in the jury box as the verdict was read with the rest of the regular jurors. So we don't know the exact makeup of the actual jury, how many men or women who actually made that final decision that Adam Coy would be found guilty on all 3 charges. Now, as the verdict was read, the family of Andre Hill sat behind me, and you could hear them say, "Finally, thank God." There were tears on both sides. Officer Amy Detweiler was also in the courtroom as the verdict was read. An unusual move. She was not expected to be here today. She, of course, was that second officer who was with Adam Coy the night of the shooting. She did not see anything in Hill's hand. She said his body was turned so she couldn't see, so she did not shoot. She testified during the trial. As the verdict was read, there were tears in her eyes as well. Now, the jury was not made aware of any of the medical conditions that Adam Coy is facing, but Attorney Mark Collins listed for the judge some of the things that Coy is facing as he's dealing with cancer treatments. He did tell the court today that he's going through bone marrow transplants as we speak, that he has another appointment in a couple of weeks for another scan. But the prosecutors asked that his bond be revoked immediately and that he be taken into custody. Of course, the defense wanted to push that back by a couple of weeks so he could get some of his medical affairs in order, but the judge granted that his bond be revoked right away. I asked Anthony Pearson about that, the prosecutor in the case, who was initially appointed as special prosecutor. He was working for BCI at the time, and then he took a job with the Franklin County and kept this case. And he said it's standard practice in a case like this to ask for a bond revocation for a suspect who's been found guilty, and he said he just wanted to make sure that all things were equal. And you can imagine just the outpouring of emotion throughout the whole courtroom today. Angela, back to you.
Definitely, Lacey. And you know, I have to say, you and I have covered similar trials like this before, and in your experience as well, I think right now what we're hearing, and we heard from FOP President Brian Steele, his shock, true shock over the fact that the murder charge came back as guilty. And his concern is that perhaps public safety in the future could be hampered in some way because officers may fear reacting in that instant because it could lead to a murder charge. What's your take on this fact that a murder charge of this nature came back as guilty, and we haven't seen something like this in recent history?
Yeah, I actually asked the Fraternal Order of Police President Brian Steele about that, if this was in fact the first Columbus police officer to be found guilty of murder, and he said it is. And he said he is concerned about the message it will send to his members. Now, keep in mind, in the last 4 years, former Columbus police officer Andrew Mitchell went through a murder trial. There was a hung jury in his initial trial, then he was found not guilty in the second trial. Former Franklin County Sheriff's Deputy Jason Meade went through a trial earlier this year. That was a hung jury. He's expected to be retried in the end of February. We also also have Columbus Police Officer Ricky Anderson and Glendon Township Police Officer Connor Grubbs, who will face charges in the next few months. And Steele's point was the concern that this message will send to potential jurors in those cases, and also to his members. He doesn't want his members to second guess themselves in a life or death situation. And Attorney Mark Collins echoed that sentiment